Hey, welcome back. I'm Christina Kent, a fine artist based out of San Francisco. And today I'm speaking to you from Radian Gallery, where I'm having my first ever solo show here in the city. Let's check it out. To start the show, we'll look at a few paintings that focus on the city of San Francisco and all of the different colors and shapes that we can see at different times of day and in different weather. This painting here is called Fresh Produce, and it's based on a view from my neighborhood in Potrero Hill. We have a convenience store on one of the main streets, and I walk past it all the time. And I was just really stunned by the way the light was hitting it one day. I was walking back home from my studio, and you could just see this strong lighting that was casting a really strong shadow. Like, we had this beautiful green awning that was casting this shadow, and then parts of the building that were this yellow color that was really standing out against the more neutral colors of the street below. In this painting, I use a lot of the palette knife in addition to soft brush strokes to create sort of a soft yet varied texture across the canvas. So you have both these strong shadows being cast by the light, but you also have this softness being created by the mark making. Next, we have my painting Southwest from Alta Plaza, and this is a painting based on a view from Alta Plaza Park, which is one of my favorite parks to paint at in San Francisco. And what really struck me, so when you go to the park, you get this whole panoramic view of the city, and I really like that. But at some point it's almost overwhelming to paint the entire panorama. So I like to hone in on small elements of the scene. And what really caught my eye in this scene was the bright sunlight that was glinting off of the roofs and the trim of these houses in the foreground. So I just loved that effect. And then you also have the other houses sort of disappearing into the background, also catching little bits of highlight here and there. I feel like it really captures the brilliance of the sun on that day and how that highlights the forms of the cityscape. I also love how the white parts of the buildings that are in shadow end up reflecting the bright blue of the sky, giving us that feeling of a really sunny, clear day. The next painting is Fog on Haight Street, and this is a painting based on my old neighborhood in San Francisco. There are lots of Victorian houses, and it was in a much foggier part of the city, so this was a pretty common view that I would see out my window most mornings. I love painting the fog in San Francisco. I love how it softens things, and it seems almost simple. Like, when you first look at it, it seems like it's all just a massive gray, but then the closer you look, the more you start to notice these nuances of color, like how it's actually almost a rainbow of colors hidden in this gray fog. I also like how in this painting it creates this feeling of softness, like an early foggy morning, you're waking up and looking out onto the city. And then I also like how we have a lot of action and detail happening in the foreground here, but then as we go to the higher part of the painting, we have just a lot of space and a lot of sort of expansiveness being created by the subtle, soft fog. This next painting is called Sunset in Potrero, and in this painting we're really leaning into the colors that we see around sunset. So we have that orange light that's hitting these houses that are on a hill, but then in the background we have the blue of the distant hills, of the bay, of the part of the street that's in shadow. It's a relatively quiet and peaceful scene, but at the same time, the vertical composition and all of the vertical lines of the houses, I feel like, give the painting a quiet energy. And the last painting in the Cityscape series is this painting, Potrero at Golden Hour. And this focuses on my neighborhood of Potrero Hill, capturing that beautiful golden light at the end of the day. For me, this painting is a great example of when the mundane turns into the sublime, and that's what I was really seeking with a lot of the work in this show, of finding and capturing those moments. This is a scene in Potrero Hill that I walk by almost every day. It's along my daily walk to the studio, and most days I am walking home later in the evening. The light can be very beautiful, but I don't necessarily feel inspired. But for whatever reason, on this one day, there was the beautiful light of sunset and I think there was just kind of this haziness to the atmosphere that was giving everything this incredible glow, and I immediately felt inspired to paint. I love how the haziness and the sense of atmosphere, in addition to the light that's being reflected off the street and kind of bouncing into some of the shadows, gives the painting almost a very soft, sort of dreamlike atmosphere. Some areas are very soft, with edges of the trees or the cars blurring into other aspects of the composition, while other areas are much sharper and more defined. I like giving the eye some of these focal points, and then also giving it some areas to rest, some quieter parts of the painting that are just very soft. And throughout the painting, I'm gradually shifting the hue and the saturation of the colors, which gives them almost this shimmering, vibrating quality. Next, I turn my attention away from capturing the moments of light and atmosphere in the city towards the landscape. In the landscape, freed from the constraints of structures and buildings, I'm able to focus more on mark making and texture. In this painting, Towards the Pass, we're venturing outside of California, now into Colorado. One of the things that I find most arresting about painting the mountains is that we see the strong contrast between the snow that is so bright and white and the dark colors of the trees and the rocks. And I love the abstract shapes that are created. In these natural scenes, we're losing the sharp lines of buildings, and instead we see much more swooping forms, these organic shapes created by the snow on the mountains and the trees on the mountainside. We also get a sense of deep space and atmosphere from the mountains that are off in the distance that echoes the atmosphere that we see in the closer up city scenes. In this next painting, Mountain Valley, we get a more close-up view of the landscape, seeing the snow that's almost right at our feet, and then seeing the further part of the valley disappearing off into the distance. In this painting, I was really focusing on the strong texture of the snow and the light that's sort of bouncing off of the snow in the foreground compared to the softness of the snow and the trees in the valley. This brings us to the last of the landscapes, sunset from Mount Tamalpais. At 4 feet by 8 feet, this is my biggest painting to date, and I knew I needed a large canvas to capture this enormous and vast view. This painting is based on a view from the east peak of Mount Tamalpais, which is just north of San Francisco. It's my favorite place to go for panoramic views of the Bay Area, and here we see the view when we're looking towards East Bay across the San Rafael Bridge. I love how in this one we see the full rainbow of colors that's so emblematic of sunset. We have the parts of North Bay that are in shadow of the mountain, and then we have further out as we're looking east, the colors become much warmer. We start to see some purples, some reds up towards the sky, and then we see oranges and yellows. In this painting, I'm really diving into the texture that the palette knife allows. So I use both the brush to create some soft marks, but also using the palette knife to apply thick layers of paint and create very dynamic marks. This mark making gives more energy and life to this otherwise very peaceful and tranquil scene. The palette knife creates these strong dynamic marks that look completely abstract when viewed up close, but as we take a view of the painting from farther away, the whole image comes together. And last but not least, we have my painting Texas Storm, which is a combination of both urban and landscape elements. This painting represents a nostalgic view of the classic American road trip. Particularly, this is based in Texas, where we would get these big rainstorms, and so you can see the giant storm clouds that are sort of towering over this highway, dwarfing the cars and buildings. We also see small details that are pretty abstracted, but they hint at a lot of the things that you would see on classic American road trips. The clouds are somewhat ominous, but they create a feeling of space as they tower over the rest of the composition. And the soft blue tones, plus the sun peeking through the clouds, suggest that the worst of the storm is over. Thanks so much for coming along on this exhibition tour of my show, Capture at Radian Gallery here in San Francisco. If you're in the Bay Area, be sure to check out the show before it closes on August 31st, 2024. I'll put all the details in the description below. And as always, a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting this channel and making these videos happen. If you like my art, if you like my videos, and you want to help me make more, check out my Patreon at the link. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.